Welcome to this week's edition of the Coaches Chat. I'm John Saranides, and I'm joined this week by Chuck Adamopoulos, head football coach at Central Catholic High School. Coach Adamopoulos, it's been a long time coming, my friend, that me and you can actually sit down, two Greek guys,
That's right.
and talk football. So let's do it. How are you this evening?
I'm doing well, and thank you very much for having me on. And if you see me glance off to the side, I do have the Bruins on in the background.
Yeah, well, hey, I totally get it, totally understand. You know what? We can talk some football. You can keep an eye on the score. And then, by the way, if they give up a goal, the Islanders go up 1-0, 2-1 or something, feel free to drop an F-bomb. We can't mute it, but whatever. We are a family show, but hey, we get passion. So let's just jump right into it, Coach. Obviously, you've been at Central for 37 years. Talk a little bit about how you got into coaching, how you started at Central, and how have you been able to be there for so long and be one of the best coaches in the state, running one of the best programs in the state?
My dad was a longtime coach at Peabody High School. He's actually in the Mass Hall of Fame. He coached in the 60s and 70s. So I grew up around it with he being a coach, and he didn't want me to go into teaching and coaching, but I ended up when I got out of college in 81 and a half, had a little bit too good a time, so it was an extra half year. I ended up coaching at my alma mater. I went to Pentucket Regional High School in the Cape Ann League, and my buddy Steve Hayden, who's been there as head coach, I believe 39 years, got hired 3 weeks before the season started, and he needed assistance. And I said, I'll help you. And I started substitute teaching and said, I think I want to do this, and had a business degree, went to Salem State at night, got a teaching certification, and did 2 years at Pentucket. There was an ad for a business teacher at Central Catholic. I'd never been to the school. I think the only time I'd been to Lawrence was to go eat at Bishop's, which was a famous Lebanese restaurant up in the Merrimack Valley, and got hired as a business teacher, and was an assistant for 13 years. And I just fell in love with the school. Had a few opportunities to leave when I was young and go to public school. And if I had, I would have been able to retire from teaching last year. But as a Catholic school teacher, I got to go another 4 and get to Medicare. But I don't regret anything. It's been a great school to work at. And after 13 years, there was an opening at head coach, and school took a chance on me. I had started the wrestling program, so I'd been a head wrestling coach at the school. And I actually was an AD in the early 90s for 3 years as well. And so in 97, I got the head coaching job, and we had a young staff, and we were fortunate. We actually won the Division II Super Bowl in 97 and 98, our first 2 years. And I'm sorry, I just got to get rid of a phone call here.
No, that's okay.
I want you to know I'm hanging up on my athletic director. So.
Oh, hey, listen, you know what? He'll see this and he'll know that you have a good excuse.
He used to be my special teams coach, so I still do have some sort of hold over him. Yeah, so in 97, I became the head coach, and I've been fortunate. My whole staff, except for one guy, is all Central Catholic grads, all played at the school. I've coached most of them. So, our culture is what it is. It's been the same for a long time. Most of the coaches coach other sports at the school. We kind of use track as an extension of our football program. I think 3 of my coaches are the track coaches. I used to help coach track as well, and it's been a great ride. But as you know, football is a staff sport, and
Mm-hmm.
I think more than any other sport. And I've been fortunate. I've kept my staff together, and I know some guys, it's hard. They have to find new guys every year, and it's tough to do that. And I've really kept my staff together, and I think that's been a big key to our success, is to have that continuity with guys on my staff.
Yeah, I couldn't agree with you more, Chuck. I think it's so important to have that staff continuity and stability, and you see it. You see it with a lot of the programs around the state through the years that have been competitive and contending year in and year out. They tend to have staff stability. They've got it at the top with the head guy, but then they also have it at the assistant coaching level as well. And it's important, right? Because the more turnover you have, the harder it is to consistently win games and build a program that can sustain success. So you have certainly done that. Let's talk a little bit about the fall 2 season. Obviously, challenging season for everybody across the state with COVID and opt-outs and cancellations and whatnot. Talk a little bit about your experience with the fall 2 season. obviously it went pretty well for you guys. You ended up winning the Merrimack Valley conference title. But talk a little bit about the fall 2 season and the experience that it was for you and your program.
It was, I think, you have to almost go back to the summer because we were allowed to do summer workouts. And we were doing that with the hopes that we would play in September. And then that didn't come about, but then we were allowed to practice without pads. And we were doing that a couple times a week. And I think that helped keep kids into it and have some hope. And, but it was a grind. Like everyone says it was a short season, but I tell people, we still worked out in the summer and we still practiced a couple times all fall. And we actually end up probably putting in more time than we would almost in a typical season. And then still through the winter, you're not sure, is there still going to be football? And then when they gave the green light, I was excited. The hard thing, and I know you work in a school, when football typically starts, it's the beginning of the year.
Yeah.
You're full of energy,
Oh yeah.
As an old guy teacher, and typically February, March is the time when I'm in my most relaxing mode of the year, and I'm focused totally on thoroughbred handicapping, and all of a sudden football starts in February, and
right.
But I mean, we were thrilled that it did. I think some of the hardest things, obviously outside of the masks and things like that, is our JVs we didn't have our JVs practice with us. We had to put them down the other end of the field to minimize, because we were doing if one guy was positive and they were on your end of the field, all 50 guys or whatever you had practicing, all were going into quarantine. We weren't doing all right. No, just those few receivers. It was so we kept the JVs totally away, and I hated that, but I understood why we had to do it, because typically we use our JVs to run all the scout huddles, and we develop them that way. And I almost feel like I missed out seeing some of these sophomores that I normally see. But the kids were awesome. The kids did what we needed them to do. And I went in hoping, okay, let's try to get at least 4 games. And then each week, okay, we got that one. Let's get another one. And we end up getting all 7 in. Now, some of that's luck because you need the other teams you're playing to also be healthy.
Right.
And we had one, game where BC High couldn't play, and we got Billerica, whoever they were going to play that week, their team had to pull out, and we just matched up, and so we got 7 games in, and which was awesome. And we got to play all our league games, so we got to have, we competed for a league title. We did a thing where we were the large school champs, Tewksbury were the small school champs, and we played what we called the MVC Cup at the end of the year, which was kind of a cool thing too. Definitely would have loved to have been in the playoffs in the fall with the team we had.
Right.
But that's the way it was. But I'll tell you this, as a coach, it was mentally draining. That whole, yourself, it was just,
oh yeah,
it was a grind, and we started to call our trainer, who was one of our COVID people in school, the Turk from the NFL days, of the guy that would go tell the player to bring the playbook, because they were getting cut. Anytime he came near my classroom, I thought he was coming up to tell me that someone tested positive or someone was in close contact. And we had 1 week we lost 3 starters because of close contact, sitting near someone in class. And so, we made it through. Again, you have to be a little bit lucky, and the kids were pretty good. And for some of our kids, we did the Alabama approach, and they got COVID in the winter. So they were going to get it again in the spring. But, I thank God we played, because we needed to, and off of what just came out from Desi, it looks like next fall, no masks in school, and looks like we're going to have some normalcy next fall, which would be great.
Yeah, it will. And you mentioned the playoffs. It'll be nice to have an opportunity to compete for more than just your league title. But I do agree with you, Coach. I thought it was a grind as well. And it was a grind because, as you know, as a head coach, you already worry about enough. And now to have to worry about COVID and tracking attendance on the bus and tracking who's at practice and talking to people in school that are involved in the COVID process, it added another layer to your responsibilities. And again, all head coaches across the board in any sport, I believe, have a lot of responsibility, but football is the largest roster of all of them. So you have even more responsibility. And then you tack all that onto it. I mean, to your point, you must have been drained, but it really had to have taken its toll.
Yeah, no, it really did. And our freshmen had got shut down 3 times. You know what I mean?
Wow.
And so again, it's lucky to tried a few JVs that were smart. They had relatives come, like for instance, from the Dominican, and so they didn't come to practice for a few days until their relatives got tested. You know, and in a couple of those cases, it saved us because if they had come to practice, we might have had to shut down the JV. So,
Wow.
you know, we kind of really told the kids, you got to buy in and be, you know, take precautions and things like that. And we got through it. But now it's a quick turnaround. Now we're already worried
Yeah.
about the summer program and, you know, and all that stuff. It's, and you got to wait because a lot of our kids do a spring sport and that's going longer than usual because of our season. And I think nothing's going to be normal till next September. And then,
Right. Yeah, no, I agree. I mean, and you mentioned the quick turnaround. I mean, realistically speaking, when you factor in passing leagues and then your summer work, you barely got 3 months in between the end of the
yeah,
season and when you really get going. Of course, people will say, well, it's 4 months because that's when you start. But you and I both know you start well before you report to camp. Speaking of the fall, I just wanted to get your thoughts on this on the new playoff format, the new statewide playoff, the new ranking system. What are your thoughts on it? Are you excited about it? Do you think it's the right thing for the state? Do you think that we're finally in a place where having this true statewide playoff will solve a lot of problems for Massachusetts high school football?
I like it in a couple of different fronts. One, with Division One, there was only North and South. Now the good part of that was we never had to play that extra playoff game right before Thanksgiving.
We didn't in D2 either. That was nice.
Yeah, that's a tough thing. But I always felt like we kept playing each other over and over again. Like our season would end, and you know we'd play St. John's Prep in a non-league game, then we'd play them in the playoffs. And I'm excited about the fact that now maybe we'll play a team from the South Shore in the playoffs instead of maybe playing a team from our league in the first round. I think it's great that schools like Springfield Central and St. John's Shrewsbury now can be in Division One because we're doing the whole state thing where there weren't enough teams out west for them to have a Division One section, and they were in Division Three, which was kind of hard for the Division Three teams to have a team like Springfield Central in there. So I like that. I like the fact that strength of schedule comes into play because sometimes some teams have trouble, you know, putting a schedule together, and you end up with a pretty tough schedule. And I'm glad they're taking into account strength of schedule when they compute things. So to me, I like it. I like the fact that we kind of doing away with the sections and going with the one big thing. And
Speaking of scheduling,
we're not that big a state that it's travel's that big a deal. I mean,
no,
we're going out to Springfield our first game next year. I mean, that's, you know, it is what it is. We used to go out and play New Bedford back in the day, and that's, you know, it's the playoffs. It's not like a Tuesday night basketball game where it's hard to travel. I mean, it's a Friday or a Saturday, so.
right. Speaking of scheduling, how have you found it scheduling games? I mean, I've talked to a lot of coaches that have said that they've had a hell of a time finding games. And obviously, the better the program, the harder it is to find games. What has your experience been like, Coach, in terms of finding games and scheduling non-league games for this new format?
Well, before it was a little bit easier for us because we didn't have to find that extra game late. As far as now, there's like an extra weekend that's kind of plugged open for us that we had to fill. Before it wasn't too bad because we always play St. John's Prep. You know, we got a thing with Springfield Central a year or two ago, so there was two there. But what we kind of forgot, and while we were so worried about getting this season in, all of a sudden that season ended, and we realized we got to fill some dates for next fall. And that's usually stuff you have done in December and January. And then because of the way the playoffs were in Division One before, all of a sudden we needed to find a game for like week 8 or 9, which we've never had to find before. And that was a little bit of a scramble. And so we managed to get everything pieced together. And I have a great AD who's very proactive as far as getting games. But we're playing St. John's and Shrewsbury for the first time next year, which is a great thing. And then we're going down to Barnstable late in the year. We're going to play them. And I know that's not easy because I think they knocked off Zavarian 2 years ago. And my wife, who could care less about football, she's Barnstable grad, so she's actually paid attention to our non-league schedule for the first time. And she may drive down there and actually go to a game and probably cheer.
Just make sure she's not rooting for
Well, I was
Barnstable.
gonna say she could be cheering against me based on how I acted that week.
No, and you bring up a good point. I mean, a lot of it is having an athletic director that's on point and working with you to find the right games. But as I said earlier, obviously it's tough to find games when you're an established program. And I'm not saying coaches are ducking coaches or programs are ducking programs, but it is. And let's face it, it has to be the right matchup. Speaking of the right matchup, obviously you guys play in a very good league. How does that league prepare you guys for the playoffs? How does it position you to be battle tested to play in the playoffs?
It's been, our league's been good as far as that because we get a variety of different teams that run different things in our league. So from the X and O point of view, it's helpful in that. I think the combination of playing the Andovers, the Lowells, and things like that with the non-league teams that we play, that whole mix does a pretty good job getting us ready. And we always have pretty good scrimmage till we go BC High, Xaverian, and Mansfield for our 3 scrimmages. So, we get pretty tested pretty well right through there. So we always feel prepared when we go in.
Yeah, and I have a little bit of experience with Mansfield, so I know exactly what you mean when it comes to them.
Well, we do a game scrimmage with them, and I always like to scrimmage guys I like. And for years, we scrimmage Xaverian when Charlie's there, and then now with Al there, and I love Al. And Mike Redding's one of my favorite people. He's a great coach. His teams are always tough, and he's the best because he's always scooting from our game scrimmage to go to Logan Airport because he's usually playing some team from like Ohio or something, and he's flying to go. He's flying to go scout him. He cracks me up. He's like always on the go.
Oh, he is.
So we have a thing with our kids. We tell them if I ever hear them say that we won or lost a scrimmage 2-1 or 3-2, that they'll be dead to me, and that no one wins scrimmages. We use them to get ready for our season. And it's funny, they'll be sitting in class and they'll hear like a girl in the girls' hoop team say they beat so-and-so in a scrimmage by 12 points. And one of my football players will go, no one wins scrimmages, and it's so I like scrimmaging teams that are also trying to get ready and not worried about, winning 1-0 or 2-1
right,
or whatever in the scrimmages. And so we always know what we have or don't have by the time we finish those 3 teams.
Obviously, you've been at Central Catholic for a long time, and I've asked every coach that I've had on the coaches chat this question, but kids, how much, in your opinion, have kids changed today? You hear a lot of people say that kids have changed today. It's not the same as it used to be, blah, blah, blah. In your opinion, having been a teacher and a coach for a long time, have you seen that change in kids? Have kids truly changed as much as people think they have?
Not as much as people think they have. I don't. I think kids, there's one thing I learned from my dad is he said, kids will respond to discipline as long as you're consistent with your discipline. And that's what we tried to do. And our kids, and sometimes I watch our kids, then they'll play for other teams at our school, and they act a little different sometimes. And, and I have to give them a little on the side, like, you wouldn't do that if you were playing for us. But overall, I say no. The one thing I've noticed is there's not many kids that want to be linemen anymore.
No.
And
no, they're all skill guys now.
I mean, God love flag football because I think it's helped keep football going. But I think all these big kids are playing flag football. They're all catching passes. Then they don't want to be linemen when they come to us. But overall, I'd say kids are still the same. And I think what's hard, or maybe what's changed it, is I think what's kept football a great sport is we don't have club teams or AAU and things like that, where the football season is the thing. It's creeping into our sport. I'm kind of glad I'm near the tail end of my career because I think in 5-6 years, we might start getting that best basketball AAU thing, creeping in. But I think parents sometimes fall prey to that they have to pay for certain things, whether it's quote unquote advisors to help them with college and things like that. But for the most part, I think kids are still the same. And maybe I'm fortunate enough that because I've been in one place for 37 years, we do what we do and people understand that. that's probably helped with that. But I still think they're the same.
You mentioned you've been at Central Catholic for 37 years. What makes it a special place for you? Why is Central Catholic a place that parents should want to send their kids to?
It's interesting. We're not your typical Catholic high school in Mass. It's got a big sprawling campus. We're right in the middle of the city of Lawrence. In fact, when I started there in 1984, we had the prison, the Essex County Jail, was right where we now practice football. Like I would look out my classroom window, and I'd be looking at the guard up in the tower, be looking eye level with me, and there was a prison right there, and so we're right in the city, but we've embraced it, and I think our kids are better for it because they're out in the community doing things. And when I started at Central, we were 940 boys, and probably 939 of them were white. And now we're co-ed. The school's about 1/3 minority, which has been a great thing. And people like to come because we do have diversity at the school. Some people send their kids because of that. It's a school that's got a lot of alumni that teach at it. I'm not an alumnus of the school, but at some point, I think they should give me an honorary degree. I've been there long enough.
They should. You've been there long enough, yeah.
But a lot of alumni come back and work at it. We're part of the community in Lawrence, and in Lawrence, the city itself takes a bad rap. It's a lot better place than it gets credit for, and it's neat. The atmosphere of where we are is kind of a cool thing. But there's a lot of tradition at the school, and alumni that care, and it's a school that supports things, and I feel supported there as a teacher coach. So to me, it's a special place. All 4 of my kids went there, and I think they're better for it too.
Mm-hmm. Obviously, you're the son of a coach. You mentioned your dad was the longtime coach at Peabody High School. How much did he influence your thought process as a coach?
A lot from the point of view of how to practice, of not having people stand around, drilling the basics. His big thing was block and tackle. You better be able to block and tackle, or you're not going to win games. And caring about kids, and caring about not the starters, but all the kids. And that's kind of some of the lessons I tried to learn from him and have embraced. And it was neat. He was funny because he was a very disciplinarian when he coached, but he would come to my practices and he would be like the player's lawyer, and he'd be their buddy and stuff. And I'll tell you this, because I know, obviously, the Lees. We used to, when we go to camp, we were with Walpole up at camp. Like when I started off, Chuck Grant was the coach at Walpole.
Yeah.
And Coach Lee would show up at camp up in New Hampshire, for the double session week up there. And that was like God when he showed up with all the Walpole guys. And obviously, that Coach Lee's the best, but my father would come up to camp. And one day I look over, and the two of them are sitting in a golf cart together, watching. We were scrimmaging each other. And it was kind of cool. These two guys who, both were Hall of Famers in Massachusetts, sitting there just shooting the breeze, watching practice, and a pretty neat thing. So it's, a lot of times not so much X's and O's when you have like a dad or something that was in the sport. It's more like just philosophy and things like that.
Speaking of philosophy, obviously the game has changed. I remember when I first started coaching in the early 90s, the wing tee was the in-fat offense. If you couldn't run the I, you ran the wing tee, the whole misdirection.
Now, John, don't make fun of the wing tee because I'm an old wing tee coach.
Well, I am too. And I guess my point is that the wing tee was very popular in the 90s because it was a system offense, and it was the alternative to the I, and it enabled you to use different players in different ways. Of course, the spread has in essence become that now, but how much do you think that the game has evolved in that regard? And in your situation, do you think that running the spread is beneficial? Do you run the spread because it plays to your skill, or do you think, from a philosophical standpoint, I like the offense and I want to run it?
I'll just tell you this. When I took over as head coach, we had been an I team, and I played at Pentucket. We were a wing T team when I was there. I switched us to the wing T, and at the time, Tewksbury was doing some wing T, but the rest of the MVC were all I teams. And we were like unique that we were full blown running it, and we really did well with it. And then it kind of ran its course. Where after about 7, 8, 9 years, it wasn't doing what it was doing before. People were used to it. Other teams were running it in our league, and we started to dabble in the spread. My offensive coordinator, John Sexton, outstanding job, and he really works hard at it and goes places and is up at UNH, over at Merrimack College, things like that. And I'm a defensive guy. But when I first started, I called everything offense, defense, and you could never do that now. You could back in the mid-90s.
It's a lot.
But we like it because it's a pain in the neck. If you keep tinkering with it and put stuff in, it does drive teams crazy. I think you get kids to come out that maybe might not come out before.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe basketball-type kids. I know sometimes kids come to our school that maybe are coming out of districts that they're not running the spread. And you might, like a kid like Aiden, he knew we throw the ball. He knows that, and he came. So I just think it's a fun offense to run. Kids enjoy running it. I think it's a pain in the neck to defend. I remember when Pat Murphy was at Drake, and he was kind of the first guy in our league to do it. And, all of a sudden we're playing him and he's reading our DT and not blocking him. And we're like, all right, what's going on here? What is this that they're running?
Yeah, what's he doing? Right.
Yeah. And then you get used to it, but then something else comes along. And so it's been great for us. It really has. It's we've done well offensively, and I've become a big fan of it. I really have. And it's not that it's easy to coach linemen with it. There's a lot less rules. You have to do gap down backer and all that stuff that I used to teach.
Oh yeah.
With the
Winty was pretty intensive up front.
Yes, it was. And but again, getting kids to stay on double teams and then come off now and the zone blocking and all that stuff isn't easy to get them to do, but the rule wise it's easy. But I've grown to really like the offense a lot. I really have.
You mentioned your quarterback, Aiden Pereira. Talk a little bit about what you have coming back this season. What are your thoughts and expectations for the fall, the real fall?
We got most of our skilled kids back. We lost a few good senior skilled kids, but our top running backs that we rotated in are back. Aiden Pereira has been an outstanding quarterback for us for 2 years, and he just loves football, and I think he's special. And then we lost Jermaine Wiggins, who was our tight end. He got hurt actually in the second game of our season this year. But, Preston Zinter's back, and a few of our other receivers are back. So skilled kids were pretty good. We got really lost a good core of linemen, though. We have two linemen back, but probably as decimating the line as we've been coming in. So that's going to be our big project is to come up with linemen.
Yeah, and, of course, the expectations are always high for you guys. Obviously, you want to win the MVC large. You want to make a playoff run. And with the new format, and you alluded to this earlier, Coach, that it is going to be different in that it's not going to just be north-south now. You may end up at some point running into Springfield Central again, who you opened with. So
yeah,
how much of your thought process for you and your staff this summer, and in terms of getting your guys ready? And I guess I'm going to ask a broader question here, because I think a lot of coaches are going to – pretty much every coach is going to have to wrestle with this at some point, no pun intended, being that you're a wrestling guy, but how much of that is taken into consideration when you're preparing your team over the summer in training camp? Because as we talked about earlier, it's a short turnaround. Physically, these guys are going to be engaged, but you don't want to wear them down either.
Right. Our biggest thing this summer is to really get our lifting going again, because we, typically we'll lift like most teams a couple times a week during the season, and we weren't allowed to go in the weight room, during that season. We couldn't go in the winter. I'm looking at it. Desi has said for next year that everything's kind of back to normal, that when the school year ends, we can get back in and get rolling. So that's a big thing as far as that. It does help that we've got experience back as far as our pass game and things like that. And we usually play in a 7-on-7 league and do that. I hate 7-on-7 probably more than any coach in America.
I disagree. I think Matt Wassel might hate it more than you.
Well, you know what it is? It's the fake tough guy season. That's when the guys are playing defense that won't tackle anyone during the season get all chirpy and and get going. But it's a necessary evil. It's a necessary evil. But it's funny when we prepare, to get ready. We don't really hone in on any one team as far as during the summer. During those 3 weeks of the 2.5 weeks of preseason, we will start working stuff for those first two opponents and introducing it before we get to that actual game week. But our thing is with the first 3 games that we have, and we get Springfield Central, St. John's Prep, St. John's Shrewsbury. We don't come out ready to go. We could easily be 0-3, and be playing decent. But we'll like Vlad said, they're focusing on us. They're our first game. We will be looking at them. I'm excited, and I don't know about you, but one of my favorite times of coaching is the preseason. I'm talking the double sessions, those 2.5 weeks, because you're not coaching specifically to get ready for a team, and you can coach your positions and do it. It's my favorite time of the year, and I missed that this year that we didn't have that.
No, because you just literally showed up and started practicing. Yeah. You're right. It's a great time to get to reconnect with the kids, but to get to know some of the younger guys as well as they become a part of the program.
No, absolutely. You're not teaching. They're not in school. It's just football, and it is. That was something I missed a lot during this past year.
Well, I'm going to deviate from the usual end of the show here, and I'd be remiss, Greek to Greek, if I didn't get into some Greek food talk with you. Give me your top 3 Greek foods as a Greek, a tried and true Greek. What are your 3 favorites?
Lamb in any form.
I'm a heretic, by the way, not a lamb guy.
Oh, really? Lamb. My wife makes, despite again being Scottish, she makes a killer spinach pie.
Nice.
Lamb, spinach pie, and I'm a Grape Leaf fan too. And I will tell you this: we have a sizable Lebanese population in our school, and I drive them crazy because I tell them that they copied the Greeks for food. And so then when we have parent,
I agree.
When we have parent teacher night, all the Lebanese moms come in and attack me, saying, Coach A, I heard you say that we don't know how to make any food, and it was all from the Greeks. But that would be my 3, I think.
I've had, it's funny that you say that because I've had that conversation with Lebanese students of my own in the past in Norwood, where they'll tell me, Mr. S, Lebanese baklava is better. Turkish baklava is better. I'm like, what are you talking about? You all stole it from us. This is our thing. We make it the best.
I will do this. I have to tip my hats to Lebanese and baklava because there's a restaurant in Salem, New Hampshire called Jocelyn's. And I had Jocelyn in class, and they have a killer baklava there. And that's the only thing I give them some props on is the baklava. But
and theirs varies, though. I mean, they make theirs with pistachio, and theirs is a little different. I mean, we're tried and true walnuts, but they'll mix their nuts, but not us. If I had to say my top 3, I mean, souvlaki is probably my favorite.
Yeah.
Keftevakia or, Greek meatballs.
Yes.
Keftevis are probably my second favorite. And then third favorite, I mean, you can't go wrong with just a good piece of pasticcio, which is in essence Greek lasagna.
Pastizzo is, you got me there. I left that off the list.
Yeah, you gotta.
I'm in a Catholic high school, and I irritate a lot of people when I refer to what they call Easter as the fake Easter.
Oh,
and the Greek Orthodox Easter being the real Easter. So I ruffle a lot of feathers during that whole routine that I do.
Well, hey, listen, and I tell people this all the time. In most Christian nationalities, Christmas is the big holiday. I really believe to us it's Easter. Easter is our thing, and that entire week, and then that whole weekend where you fast for the week, and then you just stuff your face that Saturday night after church, and then it's on that Sunday. It's all about eating and drinking and just having a great time.
And then cheating on the egg competition and hitting the side of the other person's egg.
Yeah, that's right. My father, God rest his soul, he taught me that trick a long time ago, and now I'm going to be teaching it to my daughter. I'm like, hey, your cousins or anybody wants to do the egg crack game with you, here's how you win. Let me show you how Grandpa taught me how to do it. But Chuck, it was a pleasure to have you on. It's been a long time coming, my friend, and let's do this again soon.
Absolutely. Thank you for having me, John.
No problem, Coach. Anytime. That was Chuck Adamopoulos, head football coach at Central Catholic High School. That's it for this week's Coaches Chat. Until next week, peace.